Good morning, guys. Welcome to these trainings. I don't know what to call them. They're like sanity checks, right? They're just informing you about what's going on out there, codependency, how we work with it, how we can get past it. So, if you're new to me, I'm Marshall Burtcher, and I help codependents rediscover their happiness after codependency, build happy, fulfilling lives and relationships, and ultimately enjoy who they are. Before we get started, I need to share this out to the community. Let's see, let me hit the refresh here. The community is a safe haven for survivors of narcissistic abuse, neglect, alcoholism, where you can be seen and heard, valued, and protected and guided in your own liberation from your codependency, and also realize that you're the sane one. You're the one that's actually, got it right. That there's nothing wrong with you. You've been through a hellish experience. So you can join that above. The links above on Facebook, below on YouTube, as well as links to the YouTube channel, to my program, The Happiness Strategy. And there'll be an additional program coming up here next week, the Addiction to Connection System. We'll be talking about that. And you learn more about me up there. You can also join the community there. And if you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell, because I release videos and trainings, tools every week, 3 to 4 times a week on average. All right, let's get started. So this is part 2 about the SAD cycle. SAD cycle stands for seduction, abuse, and discard. This is the experience we have with narcissistic and abusive people. This is what they put us through. This narcissistic or abusive person can be your parent, it could be a spouse, it could be a religious leader, it could be a coworker, it could be a boss. It pretty much can be anybody. It could be a peer, it could be a friend, things like that. Yesterday in our previous training, we talked about the seduction phase. Today we're talking about the abuse phase right there. Let's get that little graphic there. This is what we're going through when we deal with narcissistic abuse cycles, or any kind of abuse really, because they all function about the same way. Now let's get into it. So that's that. I'm going to switch this over so you see more of me. So here we are. Okay, so abuse is the biggie, because this is where we start to move into the dynamic where codependency really becomes alive. So in the seduction phase, we become enamored and fixated on the person. We're really hooked on the euphoria in which which we feel in response to their grandiose treatment, because they're doing 4 specific things to us. Well, they're doing 3 specific things that result in 1 specific outcome. One, they're being very, very intense. They're showering us with love and attention, gifts, time, praise. This is really activating our unmet needs. It's really beginning to feel like somebody finally sees us, cares about us, loves us, wants us, that maybe even completes us. So this intensity can go on for a while, and it can be really fast, or it can be drawn out over time, but it's very much a concentrated effort of them monopolizing your attention on them, and them monopolizing your time, your energy, things like that. Which leads to the grandiose element of seduction, where they're making enormous claims, like you're their twin flame, their soulmate, you complete them, they complete you. They've never ever felt this way before, things like that. It was really grandiose things. They also claim to know who you are, even though they haven't known you all that long. I've personally experienced it where they claim to know me after a few hours. No, this is such bullshit. But when we have not been seen, when we have not been honored, when we have not been valued, that's a really intense and euphoric experience right there, a really important and powerful thing for us. So when someone's saying that to us, we kind of lose contact with reality and get fuzzy. Then they move into the enmeshment phase, where they want to escalate commitment and start to absorb our world into theirs, and then replace our world with their world, and raise the level of control and isolation they want over us, so that they can secure what's called supply, which is what they ultimately want from us. And supply is things that inflate their sense of importance, their sense of identity, that give them energy. Think of it like a vampire. It supplies the blood the vampire is taking out of their target. And this results in an addiction. We become addicted to the seduction. We have this combination of fear and love mixing together chemically within us that bonds us to them in a very similar way of Stockholm syndrome and that kind of thing. And it's called trauma bond dynamic. And this trauma bond starts in the seduction phase, and then it starts to amplify in this stage, which is abuse. Okay? So the abuse phase is the second component in this sad cycle, and it begins when the narcissistic person, the abuser or the narcissist, their use of the target, the codependent or person that they're working on, their usefulness, that what they get out of the target begins to wane. They're like, it's not tasting as good anymore. They're not feeling as alive and as inflated and as fulfilled by their pursuit of the target and by how the target is responding to them. So they're becoming numb to the impact of their behavior on the target, and they're becoming numb to the response the target's giving them. So the attention and love and praise and affection and supply that the target is giving to the abuser is starting to, it doesn't taste good anymore. It's like, if you ate donuts every day for a month, you're going to be really sick of the donut, right? You're going to get, bleh. It's the same kind of reaction that's happening within the narcissist. They're not finding as much high through it. They're not finding the rush of conquering their prey through it. And they're also starting to feel annoyed and irritated and critical, because at this point, the codependent, the target, is starting to advocate for themselves and ask things of the narcissistic person, of the abuser. They're also starting to call out things because they feel safe being themselves. So they're starting to show more of their individuality, and they're pointing out problems. They might have complaints. They're asking to do things. And the narcissist is like, I don't want this. This is annoying. Why aren't you paying attention to me? They're starting to get annoyed and critical with this because the narcissist isn't there to contribute anything to the other person. They're there for the benefit. They want to take from that person. And this is a very, very important understanding here. People who suddenly get critical and avoidant or judgmental or cold towards you after a big seduction phase, they weren't in it to get something. They were in it to get something from you rather than build something with you, right? There's a difference here. There's two kinds of relationship models that are going on. You have what's called the benefit-centered relationship, which is a transactional system where what's in it for me, and then when I get what I want, I'm done. I move on with my life. I go do what I want. Then you have this thing called connection-centered relationships, where you two want to connect and feel something emotionally, see and understand each other and value each other. Well, narcissists are benefit-centered. They're transactional only. So everything's on their terms. And at this phase, when the seduction phase is wearing off both on them and you're beginning to see this criticality enter the field, where they're starting to get abusive and critical and distant and judgmental, you're entering the abuse phase. And they're doing this because they've secured the supply. They're like, I got it. It's mine now. Now I can go be myself. I can let my mask down because now I've got them convinced and they're in my space, and I'm exacting all this control over them. So they're not going to leave. And this really plays into the narcissist's hand, and it plays into the terror that the target has, the codependent has, because the codependent's really wrestling with a fear of abandonment, a deep-seated question in them that says, am I actually worth knowing, loving, and keeping? Am I a lovable person? And so the narcissist's pull away and criticism activates these fears of abandonment and unlovability in the codependent, and so the codependent starts to chase and starts to try to fix things because the codependent has entered what's called the phase of confusion. They don't know what they're doing right or wrong. They don't understand why things have changed. Hi, Jasmine. Nice to see you. They don't understand what's happened to this person that used to love them so much. It's almost like a, Jekyll Hyde switch. It's like, where did the person I was falling in love with go? Because now they're becoming really critical or distant. Things that they used to praise and like about me, they're now criticizing about me. They're rejecting me for these things. They're pushing me away. And so naturally, the codependent, thinking that there's something wrong with them, intrinsically flawed in them, they're going to ask the wrong question. And that question, anybody want to guess what the question is? You can guess in the comments. It's the question of, what did I do wrong? What's wrong with me? What did I do to cause this? See? We, as codependents, start to internalize their behavior as something we caused. And this is exactly what the narcissist wants, because now the narcissist has a free pass. They can start to avoid accountability. And they actually help engineer this question in us as well. Because in this confusion, we have lost contact with our sense of awareness and reality. We've become more and more engrossed in the fantasy of who they are, which is based on the seduction. And we are not trusting our own perceptions. And there's certain things going on in this abuse phase that facilitate this. And one of them is this thing called gaslighting. So gaslighting is the deliberate attempt of another person, whether it's conscious or not, it's still a deliberate thing they're doing, to make another person question their reality. Question what they feel, what they experienced, question the facts about something, question what is going on. So gaslighting is an attempt to make another person question their own sense of reality and their own sense of their perception. This is where that question is, what did I do wrong? Is there something wrong with me? Comes in. Because the codependent doesn't have a strong sense of trust within inside themselves at this point, if they even did at the beginning. And now they're just assuming I'm the problem, so I've got to figure out what I'm doing wrong. Well, the narcissist isn't going to tell you what you actually are doing wrong. They're going to tell you all sorts of things you could be doing wrong. And then they might just switch it up on you to confuse you more and control you more. So, but they start with gaslighting, and it sounds like this, they usually use questions. Are you sure that's what happened? That's a big one I got. You're remembering that wrong. That's not what really happened there. You're making that up. If that's what happened, then you deserved it. So they get this really critical dismissal about what happened, but also blame you for what occurred. And then they can outright deny it. I didn't do that. You're making this up just to hurt me. So now they've pivoted around to making you the perpetrator against them and that. And then, so that's what you really think of me. You think I do that to you? You've got some real problems there. So again, they're switching it around you, making claims about you to make you question yourself. And so the goal here with gaslighting is to get you to turn against yourself, and that takes the light, the spotlight away from the narcissist and gets them more power, because now they can tell you what's real and manipulate you through that, and you start to feel fracking crazy. A little Battlestar Galactica there, but that's what starts to happen, and that is to their advantage, because now they can just do what they want. They keep you off center, you can't gauge reality, you freeze. Your brain will freeze, it'll go into a fun loop, and that means you're going to start trying to do this better. You're going to start trying to be more perfect. You're going to shame yourself, because that's the emotional response we have with this, is to feel like we're the problem, so we're shameful. We try to become more perfect, more ideal, to get them to return to the seduction phase. The whole goal on the codependent side is to try to get the narcissistic person to resume the seduction, because the codependent has a fantasy that they bought into, is that the narcissist is truly that seductive version of themselves. That's who they really are. And in the codependent, they think they know who this person is. They think they know who they could be. And so the codependent is feeding themselves their own fantasy, their own illusions and lies here about who this person is. And they're actively denying the pain. And one of the big denials, ways codependents deny things, is by making this claim. It's like, well, they had a rough childhood. They have trauma, and this is why they're doing that. That's how, if you're codependent, that's how you're talking yourself out of reality. Because, and I'll be blunt here, it doesn't matter if they have trauma. It matters that they're being abusive. Because not everybody with trauma is abusive, my friends. That's the key here. It doesn't matter what their history is. It doesn't matter why they're doing it. It matters that they're doing it. Your well-being comes first. Period. And that's how you start to break out of this, is acknowledging that it's the harm of the behavior that matters, not the causation of the behavior. Another thing that they tend to do, another thing that they tend to do is they claim that the codependent's behaviors, your behaviors, are the cause of their reactions. So now they're making you responsible for the way they show up and react. And that's a really bad thing, because now you feel responsible for what's going on, and they get to blame you and deny and run away from these things. Again, they're avoiding accountability so that they can control and manipulate you. The more they can do that, the more they can secure you as supply, and the more they can manipulate you and hurt you. Okay? Another thing they love to do here is claim that the target's needs and wants, codependent's needs and wants and feelings, are actually the problem. You're too sensitive. Just let it go. You always want so much. It's like I can never do enough for you. You're never happy with what I do. Can't you just be happy with what you get? Why is it that I always have to do more to please you? They're always complaining and feeling like a victim because you're asking for things that are actually quite reasonable. This is the phase or the element of abuse that makes you feel like, am I asking too much? Am I being irrational here? Am I selfish? And guys, the things we're asking for are realistic. It's like, I'd like to feel safe. I'd like some respect. I'd like some time with you. I'd like some intimacy. I'd like some play. I'd like some support. These are not irrational asks. These are normal asks. These are things that if you're having to ask for in your relationship frequently, there's definitely a deficit going on, something to look at there. Sans that there's any abuse. If there's abuse in your relationship, my opinion is you stop the relationship and you move to therapy. But if you're with a narcissist, therapy turns into a minefield. Abuse is a deal breaker in my book. It may not be in yours, but when I made the choice that any kind of emotional, verbal, physical, or sexual abuse or spiritual abuse occurs in a relationship, I'm done. And the reason why is because people with abusive tendencies think differently than you do. And that may be because of their trauma, that may not be. And I can speak to that to some degree because I've been an abusive person in relationships in the past. And I had to learn to own my behavior and grow up rather than using my trauma as an excuse for that behavior. And so if the person's unwilling to own their behavior, change it, and empathize with the impact it had on you, you're not going to get anywhere with them. Okay? So it's important that if someone is gaslighting you about your wants, your needs, your feelings, telling you it's too sensitive, too much, you're wrong, you're bad, why are you always doing this to me, then it's time to stop and really, really assess the relationship honestly by how you feel. And rather than, it's not about the love, guys. Love is not a reason to keep a relationship. Healthy compatibility is. And so if you're not being loved and respected in your relationship and you don't feel it, if you actually have to ask that question, you've got a problem. And it's time to really slow down and pay attention to the patterns of behavior that are happening in the relationship. Another thing narcissistic abusers tend to do is attack the character of their target. Are you that stupid? I mean, are you really that dumb? Why would you choose that? People don't really like that. Nobody really likes what you like. Things like that. They want to diminish you and your individuality. They want you to believe that there is something intrinsically wrong with you. And that's a big problem. Healthy people aren't going to do that to you. They're not going to attack you. They're not going to push against you. They're not going to diminish you. They're going to respect you. They want to understand who you are and connect with that person behind it. Another thing narcissistic and abusive people do is vilify mistakes and benign behaviors. Oh man, you deliberately forgot to do the laundry so you could make me look stupid. That is a common one I've heard. You said that to hurt me. You're holding me accountable so you can hurt my feelings. You're trying to gaslight and abuse me when you hold them accountable to something. I got that all the time growing up. It's just like, you're trying to hurt me because you didn't like what I did. Well, yeah, it hurt. So they're going to vilify mistakes. They're going to make mistakes into some malicious intent on your part. And then they're going to play into denial and victimhood in response to accountability. They'll actually say, I didn't do it. I didn't do that. You're remembering that wrong. So we're getting back into the gaslighting, or you made me do it. If you hadn't done this, I wouldn't have been that. And then they have this victimhood thing. Like, people are always picking on me. They're always telling me what I do wrong, how bad I am. Nobody really understands. And this is where their complaints about trauma. Nobody understands my trauma. They don't understand what I've been through. Bullshit. Who cares? Stop behaving that way. And then they're ultimately going to make false promises. Promises about change. It's like, okay, I was wrong there. We should get help. It's always a we with them. Well, we both have done bad things and wrong things in this relationship. So again, they're dismissing it and putting the onus on you. But they never follow through. They never actually change. They never have an awareness and an empathy that leads to a permanent change in the pattern of behaviors. Guys, these people don't care about change. They care about the benefit. They care about what they can get from you, and that is the supply. Whatever attention, affection, sex, money, time, presence you give them that inflates their sense of self. That's all they want. That's all they want. And so, fundamentally, they're doing these kinds of things to get more control over you, to diminish who you are so that they can create more of what they want out of you. That's their goal. So they have those two goals: to deepen their control over you by beating you down, and by seeing how far they can go in their behaviors until they get a reaction from you. They really, some of the more malicious, narcissistic type of people want you to really hurt, because that's a real high quality of supply there for them. Really, really, really important component here. Very, very bad and abusive here. People who are on the more shallow side of the narcissistic spectrum will push on this because they have some access to their empathy, and they understand that they wouldn't want to hurt you. They just wanted the benefit. So you see those as typically the hot and cold kind of people you would date. Avoidance can also fall on this spectrum, although they're not likely narcissistic in that respect. So it's really important to understand, and avoidance aren't abusive, by the way, guys. People with avoidant attachment aren't innately abusive. They're just avoidant. They don't want to engage. And they might have some explosive reactions to engagement or shame-based reactions that can be abusive, but they are not necessarily narcissistic. So I like to clarify that because a lot of times people confuse the two. So guys, after this phase comes the discard phase. We're going to talk about that in our next training. But today, I want you to take a moment and assess the situation you're in. And do you feel safe? Do you feel safe to be you? Do you feel safe to bring up complaints? Do you feel safe to express who you are, to share who you are, to ask for your needs? Do they respond warmly to those needs the majority of the time? Do they take accountability for their behaviors and change their behaviors? If you're answering no to these questions, then the next question is, are you being abused? Verbally, emotionally, physically, sexually, spiritually? Are you being controlled? Are you being told who you should be or who you are? Are you being told what to do, when to do it? Are your friends and family being eliminated from your life? Are you being controlled financially? Because if you're answering yes to these questions, you're in an abusive and toxic relationship. And you need to start making plans on figuring out how to exit that relationship. Because it will not get better. Abusers don't change because they don't see any reason to change. They think you're the problem and that everybody is like them, especially narcissistic ones. So please keep that in mind, and please keep yourself safe. That concludes today's training on the abuse section of the S.A.D cycle. I appreciate you guys. Yes, Majda. Am I saying that right? Let me know. It is very hard. It is very, very hard. When I went through this experience in my childhood with my father and stepmother, and it took it took a good 10 years for me to really wake up to what was really, really going on. And it is a very challenging space, but we've got your back. And if you join the community with the link above on Facebook, below on YouTube, you'll find a safe haven where you can be believed and seen, where you can be heard, and that we've got your back in dealing with this, okay? There is hope. There is a way out of this. Over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to describe what needs to happen there, and so you can heal, because healing is absolutely possible. It's something I've done myself, and thousands of others that I've worked with have accomplished that as well. So, guys, remember that you're worth knowing, loving, and keeping. Keep yourself safe, and I will see you guys in our next training. Okay? Bye-bye.